Alright, so it is a huge day, technically a huge night, because the Nintendo Switch for West Coast of the United States was released at 9 p.m., which equates to 12 a.m. East Coast. That means us West Coasters are able to play our Nintendo Switch at 10 p.m. versus 1 a.m. So just food for thought. Anyways, I was able to snag a Nintendo Switch 2, my girlfriend was able to snag a Nintendo Switch 2, and then my friend was able to snag a Nintendo Switch 2 as well, which my friend's Nintendo Switch 2 purchase is actually going to be the giveaway right here. So we have one Mario Kart World Nintendo Switch 2 bundle, and then we have another one right here. So we have two Nintendo Switches. The lucky winner of the Nintendo Switch 2 giveaway that I mentioned a few weeks ago, I will be identifying you later this week, so that way I can connect with you offline, and then I'm able to send off your Nintendo Switch to you. So congratulations to whoever you are. I did a Nintendo Switch 2 vlog, which I'll post right here, and we actually just kind of went to Best Buy, we waited in line, and it's a pretty kind of short vlog, so make sure you check out that video right there. But ultimately, at the end of the day or the end of the night, we were able to come home with a few things. And so I was able to grab the very last Nintendo Switch 2 Pro controller in stock for my Best Buy. So I am super grateful and blessed that I was able to get that Pro controller. That's something I really wanted outside of the actual Nintendo Switch. Nintendo did have some proprietary Nintendo SD Express cards there. This is a 256 gigabyte. And again, just for kind of food for thought, these Express cards are not going to be the same as a regular SD card. If you're going to be trying to use your SD card with the Nintendo Switch 2 and it's not an Express card, it's not going to work. Don't ask me about the science about it. I'm just gonna drink the I Believe juice. And so I'm gonna shamelessly admit that I didn't play Tears of the Kingdom on the original Nintendo Switch because I don't know, I didn't have time or something like that. But so I did get it for the Nintendo Switch 2, and honestly, I am excited to see this thing in 4K. I'm excited for the refresh rates, and I mean, honestly, who can say no to Zelda? Something I wasn't expecting is going to be the fact that I got this kind of Nintendo Switch 2 medallion or a coin. And so it comes in this little envelope here, and then it's in a little kind of casing, and it just says Nintendo Switch 2, as well as on the back it says Best Buy 2025. This was only going to be given to the people who were the first 50 purchasers of the Nintendo Switch 2. So maybe this is going to be a collectible item. Let me know in the comments below if you were lucky enough to get one of these actual little Nintendo coins. We have our fancy pantsy unboxing knife, so let's go ahead and go at the bottom here. There's going to be a little bit of plastic right here that we're going to cut open, and then from there, we're going to go ahead and pull the little box tongue out. And here we have the Nintendo Switch 2. So right off the bat, you see the actual Nintendo Switch tablet on the left-hand side. Again, this is going to be a 7.9-inch LCD display. Unfortunately, it's not OLED, but we'll talk about that later. On the right-hand side over here, we have the two new Joy-Cons. They are going to be larger because the Nintendo Switch 2 is larger. And so blue is on the left-hand side, orange or red is on the right-hand side. And again, these are going to be magnetized now versus kind of a rail system. We'll talk about that soon as well. Going deeper into the box, we then have this little section right here, which is kind of like a hidden section. We have our Mario Kart World, our download. So I'm going to scratch this off and input a code once I log into my Nintendo Switch, and then I'll be able to play Mario Kart World. We have some user instructions, some manuals, and then we have, what else do we have in here? We have HDMI wires, self-explanatory. And then we have these little things, which are going to obviously go with the Joy-Con respectfully to the color. These are going to allow for the Joy-Cons to be used as mice for very certain games. Going further in, we have, looks like the charging brick at the top right-hand corner. This is going to be a USB-C charging brick, and you can see here that it's a pretty hefty boy. There are no additional ports except for one USB-C port. We then have the USB-C charging wire, which is going to connect to the actual USB-C charging puck right here. So both of them are going to be using USB-C. So there's the two connections. It would essentially attach like that, just like any other charger and wire. Under this thing, we have the actual kind of Joycon hub. So you can actually use the Joycons like this. If you weren't able to snag the Pro controller, or you weren't able to snag any type of controller accessory, you can always attach the Joycons magnetically to the controller hub here, and then you can kind of play your games like this. This comes with the Switch in the box. It doesn't matter if you had the Mario Kart World Bundle or not, you're going to receive this. And then in here, I'm assuming is going to be the docking station. So this docking station, when I've been looking at it and researching it, it has a different look compared to the original Switch. This is a little bit more curvy. You can see that the corners are gone compared to the first Switch. You could see the Switch kind of labeling and branding there. And then on the back side, here's kind of a little bit more curvature again. On the far right hand side, you can see there are two USB-A ports there. And on the bottom, you can see that there's a little bit of this mesh. This is going to be for the fan, because once you open this thing up right here, this little latch, this is going to be also where you have additional ports like your AC adapter, your HDMI out, as well as your LAN port or your Ethernet drop. And then in here somewhere is going to be the fan, which allows for the Nintendo Switch to put 4K out when the Switch is docked to your TV. So on the outer plastic section here, again, we just kind of snap it back in, and that is going to be our docking station. I would have to say that this feels really good. The plastic feels like plastic, but it feels like high quality plastic, not like plastic that feels cheap. Even this little flap right here, it actually feels really, really sturdy. All right, so let's go ahead and open this up really quick, or kind of unslide this actually. This is going to be, again, the little attachment that attaches to your Joy-Con. It has a little bit of a lanyard here. This is going to allow for your Joy-Con to connect. There's a little bit of a hook right here. That's going to connect to the bottom of your Joy-Con, and then that's going to allow you to use your Joy-Con as a mouse. And obviously you could always use it like this as well. And so you have one for each side, for each color. I think they're pretty symmetrical, so I believe you could probably do some matching on your Joy-Cons if you want to. All right, so here we have the first Joy-Con. This is going to be the orange one, and then here we have the blue Joy-Con, and this is going to be the left Joy-Con. I had to say that these Joy-Cons feel really good. The size of the Joy-Cons is just really comfortable. The one big problem I had with the original Switch is the fact that the Joy-Cons were really, really small, and because I have man hands, I actually got a lot of cramping in my hands just because the ergonomics of the original Switch were so small. For reference, this is the original Joy-Con from the Nintendo Switch. You can see is super beat up, and here's the new Joy-Con. You can see the difference there. It's actually substantially bigger, and you can see that this little orange section is now going to be the magnet section, whereas the original Switch had a deck railing system. And then the button layout is still the same. You still have your XYBA, your thumbsticks, and then the Nintendo Switch 2 has a home button and a chat button, where the original Nintendo Switch only had a home button. You still get your bumper and trigger buttons on the Nintendo Switch 2, and ultimately you can see the difference. I mean, the size is really, really significant. Okay, so back to the Joy-Cons for the Nintendo Switch. These feel really good. The trigger buttons and the bumper buttons, they feel really good. The thumbsticks, the joysticks, they have like this soft kind of resistance, but also very smooth. I don't know how to quite describe it. It feels like I don't know, it just feels really, really smooth. And that's going to be true for both of the blue and orange joysticks. The kind of clickiness of it feels really good. And honestly, I don't know, I really like the feeling of it. The plus and minus button, the kind of start buttons, they're there. They don't really do too much right now because of the fact that, I mean, they're just buttons, but they are nice and tactile. And then we have the directional pad, or where the D-pad would be with these arrows on the left Joy-Con. These feel really good. They're nicely spaced out. And same thing could be said to be true for the XYBA buttons on the right-hand side. They're very, very nicely spaced out. The back of the Joy-Cons are going to be flat, so when you're holding it, it is relatively comfortable. And then, like I said earlier, the right Joy-Con has the home button as well as the chat button that Nintendo is really pushing. And so on the back end, or the back side of the Joy-Cons, since the Nintendo Switch 2 is not using a deck rail system, you can see here that there is this little button right here. This is going to be how you detach your Joy-Con 2 from your Nintendo Switch 2 tablet. And so you would just press this. It's really soft. There's little to no resistance. And you can see that there's a little bit of a little thing right there. And that is actually going to push off of the tablet, and then you'll be able to pull it off. I'll give a demonstration of that later on in the video. And the same thing for the right Joy-Con controller as well. You have that little button right there. You can see the little orange kind of whack-a-mole looking thing kind of poke out. And then on the inner portions of the actual Joy-Cons, you still have your SL and your SR button. Same thing for the orange controller. SL and SR. Overall, just the overall feeling of these Joy-Cons, I do love it. I feel like I'd be able to comfortably play this. And then on each of the Joy-Cons, you have these little light indicators right here. This is going to be letting you know your charge of each of the Joy-Cons respectively. On the inside of the Joy-Con here, you have this little thing right here, which is going to be the sensor in which you would use if you were going to be using the Joy-Con as a mouse. And then you have this longer dark rectangle here. This is going to be the place where it actually attaches to the Nintendo Switch tablet. Overall, I feel like these Joy-Cons are super grippable. They're super comfy. The plastic feels super high quality. Honestly, I feel like Nintendo really knocked it out of the park here. It just feels really good. The tactile, the clickiness, the sound. I don't know if the camera is going to pick it up, but it sounds, it feels, it just has this really high quality feeling to it. And so, as I mentioned earlier, you can actually attach these. Here's a little hook down here, right there. You can attach it to this little kind of divot. Once you click it like that, this is now going to be a mouse in which you could use on the actual desk or your lap or what have you with very specific games. To remove this kind of Joy-Con bumper, this little attachment, you see there's going to be a button on top. You press that, and then it's going to detach from the actual Switch 2. In terms of the Joy-Cons, let's go ahead and look at the Joy-Con kind of controller hub thingy here. We have our blue side, and then it just snaps together like that. And boy, that click, that magnetic click is super satisfying. Same thing for the right-hand side. Here you can see that there is like a little portion in here, which fits into this portion right there. And then you just click it together. And that magnetic pull between the Joy-Cons is just so nice and satisfying. And then you would be able to play games like this. So historically with the Nintendo Switch 1, I did like this hub or their version of it. This one feels just as good. It feels a little bit better because the Joy-Cons are a little bit bigger, but these little sections right here really give a little bit more ergonomics to the actual Joy-Cons. And honestly, I could see myself playing with this controller setup in a pinch if I had to, especially if I didn't have my Nintendo Switch Pro controller around. So to detach the Joy-Cons from the hub, here you have again, these little plastic buttons in the back. You would press it. And so as I pressed it there, you can see that it kind of pushes off. So once you press that button, you're then able to pull the actual Joy-Con off because again, this is magnetized. There is no more rail system. Same thing for this side. Here's that button, press it. You can see the blue portion and then I'll pull it off and there. So really, really simple, really easy to use. But let's go ahead and look at the actual Nintendo Switch 2 tablet. All right, so the moment of truth. This is the new Nintendo Switch tablet. It is going to be gorgeous. So again, this is a 7.9-inch LCD display, and wow, it is definitely large. Here's my original beat up Nintendo Switch 1 tablet, and then here's the bottom one. You can see the difference there. I mean, it's significant, and honestly, it's just monumental what Nintendo's done. I'm not overly pleased that Nintendo has actually maintained the bezels on the Nintendo Switch 2, but who knows, in a few years when the Nintendo Switch 2 releases their OLED model, hopefully they'll get rid of some of their bezels. All right, so on the top portion of your Nintendo Switch 2, on the left-hand side, you have your power button right there, and then you have your volume rockers, you have some fans, you have one USB-C port because there's a second one underneath, so that is super awesome. And then you have a 3.5mm headphone jack. And then this little section is something we're all familiar with, which is going to be the game card section. It's going to be working essentially the same way as the original Switch. You have this little kind of crevice in the back. You put your nail or your finger in the back, and then you would pull up, and that's going to be where your game cartridge is. And then it has this kind of little plasticky, flexible kind of cover there, so that way you can pull back the Nintendo Switch cover, game card cover, and then put the game card inside. So we're going to do that later in another video. All right, so flipping over to the side, the left-hand side, you can see the blue Joy-Con section. This is going to go like this, and again, all magnetized, so you just, there you go, nice and super simple. And then same thing for the right-hand side. Let's go ahead and attach this. boy, oh, this is so gorgeous. I'm kind of sad that I'm looking at the Nintendo Switch 2 for the first time through a camera because I'm recording for YouTube versus actually looking at it with my eyes. On the back side of the Nintendo Switch, you have some branding there. It's nice and smooth. There isn't any etching in there. You can see your Joy-Con release button there on both sides. And then you have this section right here. This is going to be the kickstand. This is going to be something that I was a little bit sketchy about because of the fact that this is a pretty big device, and I was thinking to myself, why didn't they keep that whole flat panel section that the Nintendo Switch OLED had? And honestly, I'm thinking to myself, this is solid. I mean, I'm like trying to flex it, I'm trying to bend it, and it's solid. It feels like it's an actual flap, even though it's only going to be this U shape. And to be honest, this kind of resistance in the hinges for the Nintendo Switch 2, the kind of kickstand, is really, really good. There's a lot of resistance, and you can actually see here that it goes up into some really obtuse angles and or some really acute angles. This is really, really nice. So my skepticism about the actual kickstand being good or bad, I honestly think it has already won me over. And that's actually pretty satisfying because once you close it, you can hear that there's a little bit of a click. Yeah, that's super satisfying. One thing I do want to point out for the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be behind this kickstand is actually going to be where the memory card is going to be, that express SD card. So it's going to be kind of on the back left-hand corner of the Joy-Cons. So flipping it over, you can see it's right here. And so we would take our express SD card here, and then we would put that in there for extra storage. Okay, so the hardware for the Nintendo Switch is just fantastic. The Joy-Con, the screen, the kind of magnetic stuff that's going on there, the button clickiness. I can't say enough good things about it. Don't get me wrong, the Nintendo Switch 1's design and its just engineering was really spot on for its lifetime. But now that we're in 2025 and this is Nintendo's second iteration of their most popular console, and another reason why I'm in love with the Nintendo Switch 2's hardware so far is because of the fact that usually when you have a first iteration of something, let's say like the Nintendo Switch 1, and then you have a company that makes their second iteration, the Nintendo Switch 2, you get to kind of see where the company wanted to make changes. Kind of like when you're looking at a vehicle, you have like, let's say a Toyota Tundra, and then there's a second gen Toyota Tundra, and then there's a third gen Toyota Tundra. You get to see how the company wanted to refine and make their engineering or make their product even better. And with that concept in mind, Nintendo just kind of home run. Okay, everybody, so stay tuned because I have more Nintendo Switch videos coming out. I've actually recorded more videos and did more video editing in the last 24 hours than I have ever in my small YouTube career. And I haven't actually played the Nintendo Switch yet. Everything I've done for the Nintendo Switch 2 is actually just to make videos for you all. So unboxings and initial setups and first impressions, things like that. So there's more to come. There's so much more down the pipeline. So please hit that like and subscribe button down below. I really want to make sure that you know what you need to know for the Nintendo Switch 2. I'll see you in the next one.